Good morning, No Wada. We are here at No Wada Can once again for another podcast, and I don't have Trista to tell me what day it is. It's January, February, March?
March 4th.
4th. It's March 4th, and we are here today with Jamie Bell. She is a new local dentist that's taking over for Dr. Maltzberger in Oologah.
Correct.
And she's going to be talking to us today about the effects of tobacco, specifically chew, because last week was Through with Chew Week, and due to the weather, we kind of missed our opportunity last week during Through with Chew to have Jamie on, but she's here now, and we're going to talk about the effects of tobacco, specifically chew, on your oral hygiene.
Yes.
So we will be back right after this intro.
Our mission is to promote strategies and policies which ensure improved health for all citizens of Nowata County.
Okay, I just realized how professional I was trying to be there. Don't judge me. We're just here having fun. So, Jamie, tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty.
Okay. So I'm Jamie Bell. I just took over the practice in Oologah, Innovative Family Dentistry. Dr. Joe Maltzberger was there for 40 years prior to me buying the practice from him. So I just bought the practice. He is going to continue to be there for about 6 months is the plan, the game plan that we have. But it's a great practice. The group that we have in there is really great. It's a great place to be. It's very family friendly oriented. So I feel like I am blessed to be back home. So I graduated from Oologah in 2009, and ultimately it was my goal to come back to this area. And I had been practicing in a private practice 3 years prior to that over in Claremore. And Dr. Joe's practice came for sale, and I knew that was where I was meant to be.
It was a good fit.
Yeah.
You're right along 169,
Yes,
right?
we are.
Yeah. I realized this earlier, but I went there when I was in high school. I mean...
Yeah, you can't forget the little blue building right there off the highway.
Don't judge me. I haven't been to the dentist in a while.
Okay.
And I got to tell this story because it's worth telling. I have a best friend whose wife is a hygienist, and she was going through school, and she's like, I need somebody to check for plaque, I guess. And my wife was like, Marcus hadn't been a dentist forever, so come over here. So they came over and played cards, and she was there to check my teeth. She needed one more person to do so she could finish it up. And I lean back, and she looks my mouth for like 5 seconds. She's like, dang it, Marcus. And I'm like, what? I was like, oh, crap, I'm in trouble because she's, Mrs. Hygienist. And she's like, you don't have any plaque on your teeth. You said you hadn't been to the dentist in years.
Oh, my gosh, you're lucky. Count yourself
And she's
lucky.
like, no, your teeth are awesome. And then here I am sitting drinking coffee while we're doing this. But anyway, sorry,
Not
side story.
everybody can get away with that.
No, I don't know how. I brush regularly, but...
Yeah. Well, that's good.
So, you have the new practice. You're a local lady, and you're taking over for a legend that everybody knows. So, it sounds like you're set up pretty good. Everything's going to work out because...
It's been a pretty smooth transition. I mean, a little stressful as any
As
business
any business,
purchase
yeah.
might go. But
For sure.
other than that, it's been a smooth transition. Like I said, the team that he has in place is great. Many of them have been with him almost as long as he's been practicing. So, I mean, they are very well trained and very well versed in dentistry. So, they know it as well as I do, if not better.
Right. Well, there's a good chance I'd probably still be going there if I hadn't went off to college and then hadn't been to the dentist in years.
Yeah.
But anyways, don't judge me. So, T-SET, which is Misty and I's grant here at Know What I Can. Know What I Can has the 3 grants, where the PFS, the DFC, and T-SET. Those 2 grants focus on opioid prevention, pharmaceutical opioid prevention, and drug and alcohol awareness. T-SET, if you're not already familiar, and I haven't repeated myself a million times, Tobacco Settlement Endowment Trust. We have nutrition, physical activity, and tobacco cessation, hence the dentist on the podcast. And T-SET is all about reducing preventable diseases like heart disease, diabetes, lung disease, cancer, of course, anything that we can reduce healthcare costs by just being a healthier community. And but sometimes that if you're a choker, a smoker, or a chewer, let's admit it, that's part of no one's culture. It is. It's not easy whenever people that have been chewing and smoking for a long time, whenever they started, doctors were smoking in the offices, principals were smoking, teachers were smoking, you're smoking, pilots were smoking on planes,
Yeah.
which now sounds ridiculous. But even though I don't know anybody that has been chewing or smoking for a long time that wouldn't like to quit.
And that is very true. Anybody that I talk to that comes through the office, they want to quit. It's just the process of quitting.
Right.
I mean, it's like any other addiction, to any other kind of drug or, usage, something that people are addicted
Caffeine.
to. Yes, caffeine, yes. It could also be considered a drug. But yes, so people get addicted to that because using that substance releases, happy, feel-good hormones in your body, dopamine, for example. And after, continued use of that substance and release of that hormone,
Right.
people get addicted to it. So it's hard to kick.
I was a youth counselor for roughly 14, 15 years, whatever it works out to be. And a kid, I would teach coping skills. Mm-hmm. And a kid said, well, my coping skill is cigarettes, smoking. And I said, okay, by definition, you're right. Taking a drag off a cigarette, that nicotine has a calming effect, but it dissipates the more you use it, and then you have to have it, and that is not a coping skill. So if you want to argue that it's a coping skill, I'm not going to argue with you. It technically is in the short term, but it's a very unhealthy coping skill.
Yes, I agree.
And so let's find some healthier ones. But anyways, I digress. So for somebody... For a 40-year-old man like me going and talking to a 65, 70-year-old person and going, there's no reason for me to get on a soapbox and say you should quit. They know. There's we're not guilting anybody, but education is still important because that generation needs to realize that the younger generation, I had older people offer me tobacco on a regular basis, and I didn't think anything of it because I wanted to be cool like them.
Yeah.
But another element that maybe pushes somebody over the edge, getting up there in the years, some other health issues would be their oral health. Mm-hmm. So what are the things that you see? Because I don't think you can hide anything from a dentist. If you haven't flossed, I can't just last second floss right before my dentist. You're going to know that I haven't been flossing.
Yeah. So a lot of things that people don't think about, they don't link oral health with the rest of their body, but it's all systemic, so it all works together. So all those effects that tobacco use is going to have on your lungs and your heart and your kidneys and, other things in your body are going to have the same effect on your oral health. So some of the most common things that we see, especially for early tobacco users, you'll notice a lot more staining on their teeth. You'll notice a bad breath that is associated with tobacco use, and a lot of this is due to the tar and the nicotine getting stuck on those mucous membranes in the mouth, and it really decreases the amount of oxygen that they're getting to that tissue in their mouth. And so a lot of that is associated with that tar and the nicotine that gets stuck on those mucous membranes in the mouth.
And whenever they say tar, is that literally a very, you would think, roofing tar? Is it nearly
sticky, yes, sticky black substance.
Nobody wants that on their teeth.
Associated, and along with the other 7,000 or more chemicals that are in cigarettes.
We have a little display thing that we use as an education tool at the elementary school, and it's a board, and there's a little Hot Wheel car on it, and then there's a little vial of a little white substance or whatever, and then there's a battery and this and this. Well, the thing is, all of that stuff those chemicals that are in the tar or in that the car is the oil that's in it, the gasoline in it, the cyanide that's in the mouse poison, that's all in cigarettes and tobacco.
Oh yeah.
And then, so here's something that I think a lot of people actually are aware of. I remember learning this in high school that it surprised me then, but maybe it's common knowledge now. But don't even cigarettes, but chew doesn't have little shards of fiberglass.
It does.
Is that it's a real thing? Okay, yes. I knew it was. I mean, I heard it multiple times. But talk about that in the gums.
So a lot of what we see is the reaction to the gum tissue from having that chew or the dip or snuff or whatever. It goes by many names, whatever you want to call it. Having that in there causes that tissue to kind of what we call keratinize or harden. So it really makes that's the reaction of the tissue to that substance. Again, lack of oxygen too, because that's packed up against those mucous membranes in that tissue and it can't get enough oxygen. So the reaction of the body is to harden. And along those lines as well, everybody knows or has heard of gum disease or periodontal disease, but that's one of the other common things that we see in smokers is it starts out as gingivitis, just where the gum tissue is inflamed and red.
Can you say gingivitis without thinking about that toothpaste commercial where they're like,
No.
gingivitis? That's what's going through my head. Sorry.
So it starts out as gingivitis, where those gum tissues get inflamed and irritated, and then if you continue to use the tobacco and that decrease of oxygen continues over time, then we'll start to see periodontal disease. And people, I don't think, quite understand what periodontal disease is, but it's where the gum tissue and the bone, if you think of that as your foundation for your teeth, that those start to recede because the inflammation
like your gums start going
become
down?
so severe. And so over time...
Which is not a good look.
No, it just continues to recede and recede, and then people wonder why their roots are exposed or showing.
Oh, wow.
So
I
if
didn't
you
know that.
continue to let that go, then eventually it will lead to tooth loss.
Wow. So my understanding of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, the reason that those sharp shards, like microscopic small,
Little glass fibers.
yeah, little glass, fiberglass, is because it cuts little slits in your gums and wherever else, roof of your mouth, and so that way the nicotine gets into your bloodstream faster and gives you that little fun feeling that the kids think is interesting. But over time that dissipates.
It does.
You don't have as good a reaction to that over time, and so you're just stuck with having expensive cigarette packages, and you're just
actually
addicted.
using the doesn't enter the bloodstream quite as fast as smoking does, and so people tend to use it more and more and more. They have to
get
have
where
that
they were
constant
before.
exposure, to get
Yeah.
that feeling that you're describing.
So we're probably getting close to our time, but if you have anything, please be thinking of it while I ask this question, because this is a new thing. You can't sneak anything past a dentist. Is there any effect? Do you see anything with vaping?
So yes, that was something I was going to touch. So a lot of people think that, to try to quit smoking or using chewing tobacco, they want to try the e-cigarettes. Well, those, as well as the cigarettes, have many carcinogens in them. So again, they have some of the same effects that cigarettes.
You might as well be breathing the exhaust pipe of your vehicle.
Exactly. And then studies have also shown that there's actually little metal particles from the device itself that is getting inhaled into your lungs. So yeah, it could actually potentially be more dangerous. So there needs to be more studies performed on that, but there have been studies that shown that little metal particles from the device itself are exposed.
From what Misty and I've kind of learned, whenever vaping became as prevalent as it has, people thought, oh, it's just water vapor. How could that be bad for you? Well, in Europe, they've been doing studies a little bit longer than we have, and we've been trying to rely on those studies. Now, America's studies, universities are starting to kind of catch up and go, yep, it's not as great as it sounds.
Yes.
But the tobacco companies know that this vaping is very targeted to kids, and that's why TSIT exists in the first place. The federal government sued them and got the endowment trust and trying to prevent it as much as possible. And so, of course, like good business people that the tobacco industry is, they adjusted and found something even more interesting to kids that tastes like fruit. And
and with that being said, they're putting sugar particles in there to make them taste better. So
I've never vaped, so
they're vaping thinking that's better for them, that it's not going to cause any oral health issues or other systemic health issues, but it is, and it actually can be potentially worse because of those sugar particles.
I didn't think
about that. And they're sticking that in their mouth, and it's sticking on their teeth, and they're feeding the bacteria what they want, and so then here they come in, having several cavities each visit at the dentist.
Is it as visually noticeable? Because, tar, I think, would be black and brown.
Staining, no, but it does seem to be.
So that may be another reason I think it's okay.
Yes.
Because, I don't see it. It didn't make my teeth look any
worse. But I do find that people come in using the e-cigarettes tend to have a higher caries risk or higher cavity rate.
Oh.
So.
Today we learned. I didn't know that. I was super curious, and I knew that is a big topic for our schools right now, are struggling with that. So, anything else that you thought of that maybe after
you touched on what I was thinking of.
Man, somebody should get a podcast raise. So, what would be in the wrap up? What would be your suggestion or the best case? Other than abstaining from it in general would be the best. But if somebody is full blown into, I've been doing this for years, I'm trying to cut down. In the meantime, what is the most effective? I mean, is it just the obvious of brushing and flossing as often as possible, or do they need to come in more often to see you for
both
cleaning?
of those. So
or?
keep up on the oral hygiene, brushing, flossing, keeping up with your. And so a lot of times, people who do use tobacco have to be on a more frequent recall. So not every 6 months. Instead of every 6 months, maybe they need to be on every 3 to 4 months recall. So they might have to come in a little more frequently to visit their dentist and get those staining substances off of their teeth. And they also tend to build up calculus, the hardened form of plaque, a little bit more as well. So, and that really irritates the tissue and decreases the lack of oxygen to the tissue, which then decreases their ability to heal. So, just slows down everything.
This was another thing. You were talking about how your oral health affects the entire body, and that is a misconception. I mean, I knew that, through nutrition classes in college and, my mental health and physical health, training over the years. But there's a reason why people open up horses' mouths and dogs' mouths to check on their health. I mean, it's true for
a lot of the times,
humans.
if something's going on in their body, it'll display through their mouth first.
And I mean, I'm sure this is years ago, but I mean, it would still be possible today. But there's been people that die because they let something. Isn't it like the worst place you can get like some kind of bacterial
or infection? Yes.
Infection, and
if you leave
it goes straight to the brain, is what I've heard.
Yes, and it can go to the heart too. Going to the heart's actually probably a little more scary.
We're not trying to do the fear and
no,
but it is relevant.
But
We're not trying to scare
more
anybody.
Common is for the infection to go to their heart rather than their brain.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being on, Jamie.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Nowata, Jamie Bell, and what you have your little logo right there.
See if Innovative Family Dentistry in Oologah.
Right off 169, and if I remember correctly, it's just past, like, there's a vet coming from the south side. There's the vet, then you,
so
and then
if you're heading north, coming from the south side, we're right after Dr. Wallace's vet clinic.
I may have to sign back up.
Due for a cleaning.
Right. Alrighty, well, thank you, Jamie, for being here. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.